You see many of these popular games out at the moment, like Valorant, Destiny, and Counter-Strike, where the focus is to create a casual or competitive experience with tight gameplay and a focus on multiplayer action. Realism is sometimes used as a framework for these games, but they're not exactly too worried about getting things wrong, with the exception of single-player missions, which we'll talk about later. How am I still standing after being riddled with bullets? Doesn't matter. Just wait a few seconds and you'll be good as new. How about that magazine I just dropped on the ground half full? Yep, those bullets have magically made their way back into your inventory. Don't worry about it. These games seem to want to put you right in the action as fast as possible, win or lose. The game will be there to pick you up, dust you off, and throw you right back into the meat grinder. It's almost as if the developer doesn't want the player to sweat the little things. But what if I told you there was a whole genre that was basically all about sweating the little things? Well, that's what I'll be talking about today. Why do people like these military simulators, or Milsims as those communities call it? There's a few reasons why, and there must be to have a following as dedicated as tactical shooters have. Entire careers have been born out of showing the tense, brutal, and downright hilarious moments that happen from these games. This may sound strange if you tried and failed to get into one, and that makes sense. These games have some of the largest barriers to entry out of any other genre, pushing away thousands of daily players because of their punishing nature. Realistic movement, magazines that remember ammo counts, having to manage an inventory, fully simulated weapon ballistics, and countless other minute details make getting into one of these things a daunting task. It can feel like downright work at times. However, the reward for sticking with it can be some of the most memorable moments you get in gaming. So strap on a jockstrap, pull up a fat old bowl of oatmeal, and let's get started. This is why people play Milsims.
That's a secured! Hey!
Oh, we're back.
Yeah, more bad guys incoming!
I hear mortars already moving in the back.
Hey, are we getting damn it!
Looks like they're coming from the south side.
This is not inside. This is just a shithole with a covering.
Oh, there's actually a hole in the ceiling. Okay, that's a problem.
Now we're going to start on something every shooter has to have. Guns. And the downright overwhelming amount of customization you can do to them. Most of the shooters that have come out in the last few years have at least some sort of weapon modding system, whether it be serviceable or excellent. Milsims, more often than not, seem to lean heavily into this gun porn trend that kind of began its boom in the late 2000s with the arrival of Call of Duty 4. This is great for replayability, and it gives the player enough wiggle room to experiment. And trust me, can you experiment? You can do some wacky ass shit in these games. Want a shotgun with so many flashlights on it that it turns your enemy's corneas into raisins? Do it! Want an endless amount of optics that come with a free gun attached to the bottom? Who wouldn't? Knock yourself out. Not only are the guns highly customizable, but the detail on them is staggering. Sometimes you can even see your player character toggle the rate of fire on their gun, and the actual gun model changes and reacts accordingly. This just adds to the level of immersion. It goes right down to the weapon ballistics and your character's current mental state. Simulated bullet velocity, material penetration, and compensation for the ballistic curve, combined with things like stress and weapon sway caused by gunfire suppression, means that you can't simply run and gun your way through. This also means that missing a shot isn't entirely useless. Suppressing fire is genuinely a good strategy in the right situation. And a well-timed LMG spray can do wonders for keeping the enemy off a point or cutting off an attack route. I know it may sound like I'm simply cherry-picking the best parts of certain games and applying it to an entire genre, but I promise I'm not. Pretty much all of these games have those little details. Don't get me wrong, each game has their differences in terms of how far they want to go with the realism factor. Some take it way further than others. It's a spectrum. Some companies just want to slow their game down a bit so they can deliver a team-based tactical experience. Others go the whole 9 yards, making their entire game centered around representing warfare as realistic as possible. It's like food. Some people want a tomato, while others just want ketchup. It all depends on your taste. Moving on to some of the more nitty-gritty details, we're going to talk about movement and how the player traverses through the map. Milsims will often have very large maps, dotted with multiple objectives, similar to a Battlefield or a Modern Warfare ground war map. Occasionally bigger, but rarely one smaller than that. To cover these large distances, Tactical shooters will either have vehicles or deployable spawn beacons, which will allow a player to spawn somewhere other than their main base. This promotes teamwork and also implies some of the consequences of dying. These can come in the forms of long respawn timers or long walks back to the battlefield. Now, here we have 2 clips of the players walking through a doorway, and I want you to take a look and tell me if you can see the difference. Did you see it? The one who is playing Valorant simply walks through the door and goes on his merry way without a care in the world. Meanwhile, the Tarkov player is leaning side to side and generally moving much slower. This represents so much of what I've been talking about. In Valorant, a gunfight starts when you see the other player. Since both of you can take a decent number of bullets before dropping, even if someone gets the jump on you, you can still make it out alive. After all, you're good at FPS games, right? Well, let's see that situation from a Milsim player's perspective. Okay, so you come around the corner and come face to face with an enemy. Now, remember what I said before. Fully simulated ballistics. Since he will be shooting at you, now you have to deal with weapon suppression. And since you die in 1 bullet, it's almost a coin toss who will come out on top. That means that in a Milsim, you want to avoid this exact situation at all costs. In a Milsim, the gunfight starts at the first sign that you and your team are not alone. And because this is guerrilla warfare, chances are you won't see the enemy coming before they see you. So this player that's meticulously sneaking around this one opening is shielding himself from a one-shot kill that he can't see coming, and he's relying on his teammates to make sure that they're covering every angle he isn't. This right here is by far the biggest problem with getting into tactical shooters. No, you cannot play like Rambo. No, you cannot sprint around the corner to get to the objective faster. And no, you cannot run in the middle of an open street without cover. You will die over and over and over again. The thing is though, since there's so much asked of the player and the consequences so high for failure, there's legitimate tension sprinkled throughout every moment you're playing. It's like someone starts stretching a rubber band when you spawn, and the longer you stay alive, the more tense that band gets, until finally it snaps, and all hell breaks loose. Alright. I can't put it off anymore. I have to talk about audio, because holy shit, Milsims have some good fucking audio. In these games, you get to hear the crack of the bullet breaking the sound barrier as they whiz past. Explosions rock your eardrums. The sound of debris being tossed around. And even soldiers reacting to the sheer chaos of it all.
Shit, fuck!
It's not all about the loud stuff though. The general ambience is part of what creates this oppressive atmosphere. Footsteps are very loud and clearly audible, and even something like bullet casings will sound different when hitting the ground based on the material they collide with. I'm going to specifically use Escape from Tarkov as my main example. This game uses what's called binaural audio, which is a fancy way of saying 3D audio. This makes it so you can accurately hear where someone is in a 3-dimensional space. The difference between these footsteps and the standard ones you hear in most games is insane. Listen to this.
Woman!
See what I mean? And this isn't just window dressing for the game, it completely changes the way you play and makes you ultra sensitive to any sounds that you're making. There are times where you will avoid walking over a certain surface because it'll make a considerable amount of noise, making you that much more likely to give away your exact position. Proximity chat is also something quite common among tactical shooters. For those of you who don't know, proximity chat is when your voice is essentially placed within the game environment itself, which means that if someone's talking to you, their voice will get quieter the more distance is between you. Since we're talking about chatting, I think it's time to come to the most controversial part of the video, the community. I have never seen such a dual-sided community than I have in Milsims. One moment, you're paired up with some genuinely amazing people who will communicate, help out with the team, and generally just be a great time to play with.
I don't know how many are left.
You actually killed everyone. That's how many you killed.
Well, I backed out the doorway and got like 8 of them.
Whoa!
Oh god, he just got turned to soup.
Yeah. One match later, you'll see some of the most racist, sexist, and whiny players who just complain about every little thing that goes wrong. And I can already hear what you're thinking. Isn't that literally every game online? Well, yes and no. First off, that's not something that people should have to deal with when playing an online game, regardless of if it's expected. Secondly, in most other games, you can just mute them and be done with it. But in a tactical shooter, muting your team can put you at a significant disadvantage, since you need to be coordinating. So if you're a woman or a minority who's largely the target of racist attacks online, I can't at all blame you for being turned off from these games. You basically have to choose between getting shit on or losing out on a big portion of what makes Milsims so fun. Since there is a lot of downtime when compared to other shooters, most people will just start fucking around at some point, creating some hilarious moments where things go from silly to serious in an instant. And that sucks to have to miss out on just because some dickheads don't know how to behave. However, if you have some friends to play with, then this can almost be completely alleviated. And, I mean, if you played League of Legends before, then you already know what to expect. It's just a fair warning. You may still be asking, why is this worth it? Why is being heavily punished for every mistake while dealing with assholes fun? Well, it's because every one of these complex systems kind of mashes itself together to produce so many different options and scenarios, so that each time you load up, you have no idea what's going to happen. Memorable moments are happening left and right, to the point where it feels like you're playing a single-player campaign. In something like Call of Duty, you get to play a mission where you sneak through a house with night vision on and use realistic callouts to breach doors and sweep rooms. Yeah, that happens all the time in Milsims. You get what feels like curated fun that, at times, is entirely unique to you and the other people involved in experiencing it. I'll always have fond memories of playing Arma 2 Roadblock with my friends, eventually getting bored, shooting grenades into the air, and then dodging the shrapnel while shouting, "It's a grenade lottery!" I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but it does make me sad to see these great tactical shooters with so few people playing them, especially knowing what people are potentially missing out on. And I know some people would like to play these games if they just gave them a fair shake. I mean, the survival genre and battle royale genre were basically birthed from Arma mods and game modes. Arma 2 had a DayZ battle royale mod made by someone named Player Unknown. Yeah, that Player Unknown. We all know where that led. And speaking of DayZ, yeah, it's arguably the most influential game when it comes to the survival genre as a whole. To end this off, I'm not saying that Milsims are better than more arcadey shooters. In fact, there's a lot of things that make those other games more fun, like a more consistent experience and having that feeling of mastery over the game. I'm just saying that sometimes it's fun to play as a regular human being, rather than a super soldier. Thanks guys for watching. I'll see you next time.